doing?
Well, I have the nice pleasure of welcoming all of you to the Grolier Forum. My name is Carol.
Turn it on the mic.
Good.
My name is Carol Mickey.
There you go.
My voice so loud. My husband was Eileen Cleary, who died a little over 3.5 years ago, and he loved this place. And so his children have taken it on, and we're so happy to have James as the manager. And now, and they have 2 wonderful Bennington interns for several weeks, or almost 2 months, I think it is. But I just know he thought of this place as a sacred place, and because there's nothing quite like it, with the poetry from all over the world. And he felt that poetry was really the common denominator of all people. So welcome, and we're looking forward to this wonderful reading tonight. Thank you for being here. And we're welcoming something like, is it 80, James?
There are about 88 people signed up on
Zoom.
Zoom.
So welcome people on Zoom.
Welcome to the Grolier Bookshop for our first reading of 2023. My name is Lily Hauser. I'm one of the Bennington interns. Super excited to be here. We're delighted to have Eileen Cleary, Wendy Drexler, Hyett, and Alexis reading here tonight. Before we begin reading, we ask that you please wear a mask for the duration of the reading and that you please silence your cell phones. The great poet Kathleen Aguero was scheduled to deliver the introductions tonight. However, she has fallen ill and is no longer able to attend in person. On behalf of everyone here at Grolier, we wish her a speedy recovery. Kathleen has graciously provided us with the introductions she planned to give, and we will deliver them on her behalf. Without further ado, Eileen Cleary is the author of Child Ward of the Commonwealth, which received an honorable mention for the Sheila Margaret Motton Book Prize and of 2 a.m. with Keats. In addition, she co-edited the anthology Voices Amidst the Virus, the featured text at the 2021 Michigan State University Filmetry Festival, and founded and is editor-in-chief of Lily Poetry Review of Books and Lily Poetry Review. Recent works included in Tree Lines 21st Century American Poetry, just out through Grayson Books. That bio, however, does not begin to capture the beauty and strength of Eileen's poetry, her generosity to other poets, and for the extent of her literary citizenship. Child Ward of the Commonwealth, Eileen's first book, is a work of extraordinary courage and compassion that brings us into the experience and psyche of a foster child. Leanie slurps noodles straight from a pan, stuffs liverwurst through porch slats, swallows, meatloaf thin sliced and too fast, while the real share dinner in the next room. These poems are filled with vivid imagery that does not leave us after we close the book. Then, in her next book, 2 a.m. with Keats, Eileen does something that fills me with awe. She writes an equally brilliant book, but in a radically different style, something very few poets attempt. In this collection, many of the poems are written in short sections, almost fragments, that take bold leaps, but which are held together through tone and imagery. If Child Ward of the Commonwealth is a book of emotional risk, 2 a.m. with Keats is a book of stylistic risk. And Eileen Cleary is an aerialist of poetry whose feats make us gasp. And welcome Eileen now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kathy, and thank you everyone here for being here and everyone at Zoom. And thank you, James and Grolier, for having us. I'm just going to read, to begin with, a poem from my first book, which appears in the Tree Line anthology, and it is called The Way We Pled. No branch silhouettes the snow, tree limbs cut down by some bastard or buzzsaw, chipped remains scattered afield around the stump, as if they'd tried to escape the carnage the way we fled, from my father after school. Our legs gave out. He'd gather our grains in a burlap sack, sprinkle us around the corners of the house, soak his roots in whiskey. If you ever find you are defenseless, it's best to compliment the buzzsaw, caress its teeth, pour it a glass of Jack Daniels, let it snarl, wait for the roars to become wheezes, then walk from the field unhurried. So a few years ago, I was communing with Keats every night at 2 a.m., hence 2 a.m. with Keats. And I had a conversation with him over a period of several months. And when I'm speaking to him, there's words. And when he's speaking to me, there's parentheses with no words in them. So I'm just going to read a tiny portion of this longer poem. I was trying to reach him to get a message to Lucy Brock-Broido, who had just then passed away, and I wanted him to take care of her. And in the process, I wound up sort of giving him some grief counseling of his own. 2 a.m. Keats visitations. Your apparition sings in the corner of my room, then listens, ear warm and veined, trained toward me. Lucy said I thought you might be, which makes this the first night of peace. The cattle at the fence breach chew the same grasses the bay mare gnashes, while I absorb what consumes you. I know you've felt it too, death that consumes you. My condolences on your silver dove. Myself, when I'm grandmother, I'll be neither wolf nor whale, but hoarfrost in still weather. Sometimes you're lilac or purple. If you'd lived longer, you might grow greener, more turtle. I hope your brother's gods shouldered you. Did you say music unheard? A stick runs along a fence. No, a grasshopper sings. May fawn and sweet peas bring milder wind. A dead man in your locket whose breath waters your name. How many men have become trees? Now men do this and don't require myths. I'm not your first platonic lover. You are not mine. During winter, mine read to me, her Harvard sweats awkwardly tied, and she wanted to last like the Eucharist and be preserved in vellum. As you go on, your clouds are graying gray. John, don't give your view away. How can we say whose reign it is? Tomorrow's born too soon. Seagulls mew and stamp their feet to mimic rain. Salt marsh mosquitoes fringe the air. A bagpipe blows over the Isle of Mull. For 2 centuries more, the firmament regards the desert. Let's not say it yet. A patch of night left. I'd fill in your colors, given time. I'd follow you. All right. Anyway, John Keats and I still, commune, but I try to listen more than talk. And I'm just going to finish up with a few poems from a new manuscript about a boy in Modesto, California named Stephen Stainer, who was taken from his home when he was 7 years old and kept for 7 years. And for many different reasons, I was taken from my home as a child and returned after 7 years. So his story has always stayed with me. And I'll just read a couple of poems about him. If Stevie were never taken. I'd stopped seeing the parkway where red ball gas persists long after it closed for business. The service clerk, sponging the windshield, dusty as a country road, could finally retire. If I recognized Stevie, sluggish, in the back seat, I'd see, with a sedan's spectacled driver, nearly hairless, hyperglycemic, haphazardly eluding capture, might be fleeing, and I'd pursue him, learning by heart his license plate and face, the hard years of his years, his wintering. I'd rid his Buick's trunk of its church flyers and fake monks, shred the ruse he printed to appeal to the gullible and plain old religious, everyone with a young son. I'd gag his gift to the poor, Mrs. Jones and Mr. Bean. He's out of Grimm's with sleeping pills spilled in the console, coursing through Yosemite. If he leaves no tracks on the packed ground of Tioga Pass, who can follow where he crossed into the camp? I can't. Think because of the cabin I'd be forced to tour. I might have to touch, not a monster per se, more like eyes torching dry leaves in fire season. Junior Scholastic for Stephen Stainer. The awkward 7th grade, all arms and legs, voices soaring and falling, finally cracking. Guitar strings stretched too tight. Stephen frets in the fluorescence, where he reads with the others an article on lost children. This isn't that wildlife magazine where we learn to track backyard animals whose prints vanish when mud meets grass cover. A good ranger looks for clues, a trunk where a buck rubbed its antlers, baby squirrels sussering oak leaves, a hollow where a red fox sleeps. Junior Scholastic says to solve a mystery, curious. Today brings Stephen as close as he's ever been to telling. How strange the words feel, a fat pigeon's feathers caught from his throat. He chokes. I miss my family, though no one hears. The teacher doesn't mean to brush him aside. It's just that the recess bell rings and the class clamors to play outside. And I'm just going to finish with one more. And it's called, and this is when he returned home. Abducted boy returns home after 7 years. New York Times, March 9, 1980. He couldn't have known how much his parents would shrink inside their pea-green frame house, or that his once small siblings would outsize their twin mattresses, or that his first collie would be fenced only in before's invisible lawn. Now he can only speak of cows and pigs, the farm they once owned before he went missing. During's verboten. Sometimes, if he recalls During, his brain projects that scene on the screen of his sweatshirt pulled over his eyes so that his parents can't see that he did smile in the lost centuries. His memory shows him smoking with friends in the woods or rafting on a lake between two cliffs. If he claps his hand, he can measure the distance between boy then and boy now. Never enough hands to cover his mouth if he dares to share anything blue. Blue geraniums outside a busted trailer, blue lupines, blue flax, or blue panic attacks. Sometimes the night is blue-black. In his mind maps the migration of the one wail no one else can hear. Meanwhile, cicadas broadcast their secrets. They timble their miniature drums, spreading their news instead of hiding in their rooms or staying out late after school. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. It's an honor to have been invited to introduce these poets whose work I so admire. Wendy Drexler is a recipient of a 2022 Artist Fellowship from the Massachusetts Cultural Council. Her fourth collection, Notes from the Column of Memory, was published by Terrapin Books in September of 2022. Previous collections include Before There Was Before. Her poems have appeared in Barrow Street, J Journal, Lily Poetry Review, Nimrod, Pangreas, Prairie Schooner, Salamander, Solstice, South Florida Poetry Review, Sugar House, the Atlanta Review, the Mid-American Review, the Hudson Review, the Three Penny Review, and the Valparaiso Poetry Review, among others. Her work has been featured on Verse Daily and WBUR's Cognoscenti and in numerous anthologies. She's been the poet in residence at New Mission High School in Hyde Park, Massachusetts since 2018, and is programming co-chair for the New England Poetry Club. An impressive bio indeed, and her latest book, Notes from the Column of Memory, is equally impressive. A close observer of both nature and human behavior, Drexler's imagery is striking, making the familiar startling and new. In The Raccoon, she describes the way as night fell. The two darknesses, water and sky, drank of one another, and in every second, the speaker sees a row of dead squid washed up like a pack of cigars. Each poem has its music. You were struck in the hospital, I too numb and under the thumb of something huge, unspeakable. Here are the lines, give us not just the direct rhythm of numb and thumb, but also the subtle music of hospital unspeakable. In this careful observation, this discerning ear has earned the poet the kind of wisdom that advises us. Sometimes you see a column of stones and think it's a mountain. Sometimes what seemed like a mountain is only a pile of stones. Please welcome Wendy Drexler.
Hi everybody. I'm so excited to be here and to be reading with three of my favorite people and favorite poets. It's such an honor. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. I'm so sorry you can't be here. Thank you to everybody online and in the audience. I met the three of you through Barbara Hyett at first, and Barbara has been my dear friend and mentor for over 20 years, and has taught me so much of what I've learned of craft and courage and poetry. And I want to begin with a poem for her, which was from a workshop that she led in Newfoundland in 2018. The Gannets at Cape St. Mary's, Newfoundland. Barbara says there are fewer nesting pairs this year. I can't see the missing, only the sea stacks swarming with thousands of birds, a fever of birds, pairs nesting on narrow shelves, racket of wind-whipped screeches and grunts, the air acrid with guano. Walking back along the cliff, I bend down to finger a broken shell, tangled in caribou moss, tuck the pieces in my pocket, throw them away that night. You can't keep each broken thing. I thought maybe the rock walls could last, but stones fall clattering against themselves, the way the heart of an unborn chick beats faster the first time it hears the family song. Precise lifeline of notes that chick must learn. I thought all birds sang for beauty. Not for beauty. I'll learn to love them more for that. Corral. Somewhere my father had another whole family I didn't know, a wife I didn't know, hardly ever saw. One son and a younger son. Somewhere he lived with all of them in a house. I went to that house once. Was it brick? Maybe a lawn, some trees living happily ever after. I lived with my mother. My father came for me on weekends. Once he told me a secret about this family. One of his sons wasn't his real son. He told me no one else knew. Perhaps he told me this to make me feel special because I was his favorite child, his only daughter. I liked keeping his secret. He trusted me with it. I guarded it desperately. It charged around inside me like a herd of horses galloping across a vast bare plain. To keep the horses safe, every time I saw my father, I wore the red cowgirl boots he bought for me and made of myself a corral. Apology to my ovaries. They plucked you out before you could kill me. I had to make a clean sweep. Forgive me, conductor of my train to the future, my artist daughter of long fingers and kindness, my son with his kilowatt wit and quiver of dreams. You were my gardener, my stock pot, my pantry, your shelves filled with my lifetime supply, my arbor pre-designed, assigned at birth, my divine egg timer, my clock that never needed winding. You were my pinkish gray, almond-shaped, and my God, you were brave, wore menstruation like a brightly flowered dress, and the bloody labor of your fields, your timely hatchery, your drop-down deliveries, your tubes swaying like anemones. I too thought we could wither together into gentle senescence. Forgive me for evicting you in your dotage, not even a hearing, your desk cleared in an hour, everything you'd ever carried weighing just over 2 ounces. Forgive me, you who were my wheelhouse, my workhorse, my backfill, my unpaid laborer, you who toiled decades deep in the mine of me. I want to read The Raccoon now that Kathy has mentioned it. I have not yet read it. So here goes. The Raccoon, Provincetown, Massachusetts. I'm eating a falafel sandwich on the deck at the canteen when from twilight I glean the dim shade crawling along the ridge of the roof next door. Couples bustle at the bar. The man at the table next to me sees it too. Trash pandas, he says, pointing, nuzzling the shoulder of his bare-armed lover, licking her skin. Erotic prickle I thought was past. And the raccoon, even at that distance, his loping hunched back, his enterprise so distant from mine, or was it, nipped at the shadowland between what I knew as fear and what I claimed as love. Out on the bay, the water, which before this had appeared lighter than the sky, was darker, sharpening the white hulls of boats until the boundary between water and sky, if there had been one, dissolved, and the two darknesses, water and sky, drank of one another, leaving the burning and burned out stars still shivering. Let's see. Oranges. Every morning my mother would pick 3 soap-scrubbed oranges from the fridge's bottom bin. sliced them, and with the good palm of her right hand, she'd press each cut half hard against the juicer's rotating drum until everything that orange had been sluiced down into the round basin, nothing left but the rind. Then she'd tilt the juicer to catch the slow-moving rivulet of pulp and seeds against the strainer's teeth until only filtered juice drizzled into my glass and sparked orange gold. The all-at-onceness spilled on my tongue the hustle of tart and sweet, so sharp it hurt. When my mother died, that burning bore through me, as if I had to do something about it, or for it, something I couldn't squeeze out. And I'm going to read kind of sonnets that was inspired by two things. One was reading Robert McFarlane's wonderful book Underland, in which he describes the shamanistic burial of a 40-year-old woman who lived 10,000 BCE in what's now northern Israel, which made me think about rituals around burial and my mother's burial and death, and my relationship with my mother, which also I re-examined through a box of letters I had not read for 50 years from her, that helped me really re-examine this column of memory and see what was there that I hadn't quite realized at the time. The first sonnet describes the shamanistic burial. Burial of a woman with the blackened shells of 86 tortoises. What if 40 shells had been placed in her grave, one for each of her years? I hope they held a shelf for sorrow, eased her husband's grief, for her hair, her size, her voice. A ritual spell, the leg of a boar on her shoulder to widen the way. Could those pelts have kept her from the cold, the two stone martins they spread across her body, and liquefaction of her soul that stole, that warmed her breasts? I hope she loved and hard, that the auroch's tail steadied her spine, and the eagle's wing was transport, carried her past the uphill grass to outlast time. Sprinkled like holy water those tortoise shells, with or without the need for heaven, for hell. With or without the need for heaven, for hell, I clutched my bony rabbit's foot for luck. The rabbit dead, the foot chopped off. Cruel the crisp old gold-capped clasp. No blood, no muck. At night in bed I stroked the silky fur, brown and white, slept with the chain so tight around my finger it left a faithful ring. The lore was to kill the rabbit in the night. Graveyard moon, the rabbit sat down crying like a natural child. And I'm stuck on why they placed a hacked off human foot inside that woman's grave. Was that for luck? Must we kill, need we sever, to turn ourselves golden and forever? To turn ourselves golden and forever, that's what we want. But I don't really know what my mother wore for her burial. Her lavender altar-sway, or did someone sew a shroud? Was she sleeped in the full-length mink my stepfather gave her? Did she crave a slub of silk from her father's vest? Maybe she wanted her easel, her back brace, blue rubber brush to scrub each orange with soap. Where were the lace-up Oxford she needed, her ankles weak? Where was our family dog, or his leg bone at least? And what did she say last visit in Maine as she was vanishing at 56, after brief remission? I forget what she said. Forgive me, I didn't listen. I forget what you said. Forgive me, I didn't listen until now. Your voice in your letters 50 years ago. It's clear that something sharp had come between us. Barbs, worry, wishes, and warnings and scolds. Closing my eyes, I smell your geraniums, the ones with leaves like tons, their ruddy scent. Your knack for tackling dandelions. You loved your hands in dirt. To nurture growth meant pinching back the blooms. All those years you circled my pool. Stay out of the deep end, stay out of the sun. Too many be sure tos and shouldn'ts. The spills I'd left on the counter, unsure of myself and whatever I'd done. how hard you were trying to love your daughter, what trouble we had, what turbulent water. What trouble we had, what turbulence. You'd speak to me in code, in nuts and bolts, how long to cook a roast, best to soak an egg in cold water, don't burn the toast. When what I needed was metaphor to link the distant, a bridge over churning water, to carry me past your house to Saturdays with my weekend father. The drive-ins and car rides with him rushed by too fast. Mother, remember we watched the sound of music, the motherless children, their bright-eyed, breezy new start. The fairy tale gloss, you know they never did cross the Alps. The truths like water can't tease it apart. It was myself I hadn't found. A girl can easily run aground. A grasshopper phobia ran you aground each time you saw one. Once in the car you swerved to the curb undone. Had a schoolboy stuffed one down your blouse when you were young, unnerved you? I could have taught you to love them, to see their claws as supple strength, your shield that thistle-green thorax, their mandibles as sturdy as your will to live, their antennae as your last chance, the music of hearing them rub the pegs on their legs. I was your bell, you rang me faint and feeble. You were my church, you preached and preached and preached. And you were the steeple I tried to climb to the people you thought I needed to know. When I lean down, I hear your silence working its way through the ground. I hear your silence working its way through the ground when I remember how I wanted to hurt you. I'm never going to have children. So sure of myself, my urge to dismantle my need for you, to refuse what I knew you wanted. If I stitched you a quilt, one patch for shame, one for sorrow, one for when I wasn't there when you were dying, one for my denying I was undone. I know you love me hard. The way a mouse licks and licks her babies, you licked me late and long. I nearly drowned inside your spell. Those licks, to keep me at bay or from harm's way. I've only these 98 lines to soften, to save. What have I placed 56 shells in your grave? And I'm going to close with another poem for Barbara. Little Prayer. The magnolias have opened their milk-white stars for you above the shatter. Over granite and over the smallest pebble, may the streams run clear. And where there was once hunger, let the deer find berries and bark in this unfamiliar grove, where you trace the outline of your body on air to fill the reservoir of your brand new name. And when you find yourself lost like an ant in the petals of the peony, remember, your life's work has always been to help the flower open. Thank you.
All right. Well, that was a really great intro from both of you guys. Thank you so much. The first half of this, I hope everyone's still having fun. It's a real honor to be here with you guys and listen to everyone. It's wonderful work. I'll continue with the second half. Let's have one more round of applause for you guys. All right. Eric E. Hyett is a poet and a Japanese literary translator from Brookline, Massachusetts. Together with his co-translator, Spencer Thurlow, Eric was a finalist for the 2018 National Translation Award and the 2018 Lucian Strike Asian Translation Prize, as well as the winner of the 2021 Sibley Memorial Award for Japanese Translation from the University of Chicago. Eric's poems, essays, and translations have appeared in Granta, the Georgia Review, Lilly Poetry Review, the Hudson Review, and other literary journals. Eric's debut book of poetry, Aporia, published by Lilly Poetry Review Books in 2022, was written as a response to his mother's diagnosis with Alzheimer's. Since its publication, the book has taken on a life of its own in the poetry of caregiving category, and, I might add, in the more general category of excellent poetry. It's a particular delight for me to introduce Eric Hyett, whom I've had the pleasure of knowing for a very long time. speaking for her, obviously, but I met him earlier today. It's wonderful. In fact, I believe I met Eric no more than a week after I met his mother, the poet Barbara Helfgott Hyett, when she invited me to dinner to meet her family. One of the meanings of aporia, the book's title, is that of an unsolvable contradiction. To quote from one of Eric's poems, a problem with no solution. Yet this collection has none of that shrug associated with "it is what it is," a phrase that has almost become cliché. Yes, they are poems of acceptance, but also of transformation, for the directness and restraint of their language grants their subject, Eric's mother, the utmost dignity and respect. They are filled with tender and poignant moments, but never with sentimentality. More often, in fact, the poems contain wry humor, as when the speaker describes himself as feeling completely alone in the village of unsolicited advice, of which I am the mayor, and also the village unit. I am grateful for this book on several levels, including as someone whose own mother also suffered from Alzheimer's, and as a poet, for all that it teaches me about my craft. Please welcome Eric Hyett.
Getting it all settled for a second. Thank you, Star. That was amazing. Channeling Kathy Aguero. People here okay? Acoustics good. That was thing one. I don't want Herb to yell at me that I'm not being loud enough. And then I'm going to try reading off of a tablet tonight. This is the first time ever for me. So this place, Grolier, was a hangout for my mother, Barbara. She found her friends and social life here. And here I am doing the same fucking thing. So it's great to have you here. I feel like there's two generations. Carol, thank you for keeping it going. James, thank you. And I think that's pretty much all the acknowledgments I can do. All right, so I'm going to start with a translated poem that is from a forthcoming book. Is it January again? The poet is Toshiko Hirata, present-day Japanese female poet. And I was like, oh, January. Is it January again? I buy liquid foundation for someone in her 70s. Makeup to hide wrinkles and spots. We first met when she was in her 20s. Unhappily married, sullen-faced, changing her baby's diapers. She wasn't any happier in her 30s, sewing machine, clacking out inconceivable things. In her 40s, she secretly read her daughter's diary, opened her daughter's letters without permission, cast a curse on her daughter, may you never be happy. The curse worked so well that the daughter suffered headaches every day. I didn't know this person in her 50s. I had moved far away. I didn't know this person in her 60s. I never went back even once. By the time I met this person 20-something years later, she was well into her 70s. More old person than Mom. I was shaken. I'd never expected the day when Mom would be old. Now, in my 40s, I read her shopping lists, open her bills without permission, and pay them. Though I haven't forgiven her for what happened in her 40s, I'm still buying makeup for her in her 70s. Liquid foundation, meant for hiding wrinkles and spots, might just be me trying to hide my own feelings. I'm just reading from a bunch of different stuff tonight, so I'm not even, you'll figure it out where it comes from. My mom categorizes poems. Good poem, bad poem, i.e. poems by Pinsky. Sonnet, haiku, etc. Sylvia Plath, Anne Sexton, anyone who killed herself. Poems in which the poet is dead. Frog song misinterpreted as crickets. Poetry suffering from travel poemitis. Anything attributed to Shakespeare. Online poems. Any send it to the New Yorker style poem. Screed, break my heart poems. It's cooked poems. Poems made during sex. Poem found in bottle on remote beach. Poems of madness, Baudelaire, Edgar Allan Poe, etc. Poems my mom calls genius. Poems by poets laureate other than K. Ryan. Poems my mom wrote with me as a character. Poems I write with my mom as a character. Groceries. We knew it before they did. No surprise at all. The couple down the street who used to rent the parking space behind my mother's house. One stormy Thursday, the silver Volvo gone, and in its place, groceries. a dozen sodden paper bags in single file. For 3 rainy days we kept an eye on that slow decay, my mother and I. Just an oversight, we told ourselves, told each other anyway, but soon enough nefarious, like a ferry boat lost in an icy sea when the search for survivors becomes the search for bodies and what might yet be saved. The arugula, neatly bunched, even the half-pound of tiger shrimp still fresh in white paper wrapping. We touched nothing, but on Sunday made a fire, sat beside it in the living room, just listening to the hammering rain, proceeded diligently, tirelessly to conjure up every possible scenario. In my mother's first version, on account of what my father had done, the husband was the one who had the affair, with the wife's best friend, told her about it in the front seat 15 minutes before her mother was coming to visit from Scarsdale. In shock, she unloaded the bags and watched him drive off, exhaust fuming the visible air. In my first attempt, because Rob had broken up with me on the very night we had tickets to see Lincoln Park at Madison Square Garden and never called me again, it was she who had done the thing, with their daughter's second-grade art teacher. Daughter wrapped in the back seat as her mother delivered the news, voice deadpan as a fuel injection system. But if she left him, then who lined up those groceries before she and the daughter drove off, leaving him bewildered beside cans of organic peaches and that bottle of flaxseed oil? For hours we carried on like this, my mother and I, the urgency of a mystery, a puzzle incomplete with real living pieces and dead ones too, like that rack of New Zealand lamb, $24.99 a pound from Whole Foods, for God's sake, and the other possibilities, extraterrestrials, someone caught cheating in the marital bed, Scream, the hasty gathering of undergarments, or gone off their meds again, just completely and utterly lost it this time. But then where was the other someone to pick up the pieces, carry in those bags, sing that daughter to sleep, hold down the fort? In a way. On the way to visit my mom today at Newton Wellesley Alzheimer's, there was a verbal warning from my GPS. Roadkill on road ahead. Teddy was with me. If it's a bird, I told him, I'm just going to plow right through. The road was studded with neon orange maples. I drove another 1,000 feet without knowing what to expect. Teddy said, looks like a raccoon. Second lane from the right, my lane. I swerved gently, as I did last time when my mom asked if Teddy and I were her 2 sons. I pat her hand with mine and I said, in a way. Wendy, I loved your raccoon poem, by the way. I teach that poem in my workshop regularly. It's one of my favorites. Zoom training. Today's topic is eye contact. How to seem to be looking at the viewer when there is no viewer. Move the decorative box behind you 2 inches downstage, she says, and go get a flat plate with some fruit and set it on the box. The fruit I chose was oranges. Get rid of the top orange, Katha, the trainer tells me, and move that lamp 2 inches to the left. I tell her that lamp can't move to the left, unfortunately. Oh well, she says. Another snow poem. The red line is down. I can't attend the Patriots Super Bowl victory parade. It takes me 3 hours to get to the dentist, and when I get there, she's crying. I buy a shovel and some ice melt and $84 worth of summer vegetables for soup. I text my college boyfriend, who's dead, to say we should give our relationship another shot. He texts me back, says I should wait right there in the snow outside his off-campus apartment on Mount Auburn Street. Says he'll throw me down the yellow plastic measuring cup with his key attached like he used to. The snow is blackened with toxic chemicals. The snow is flavored with white male Ivy League privilege. The snow is tainted with my terrible, relentless, soul-destroying nostalgia and HIV and dog pee and the depth of my despair. Wait. Time served. Today stands in her bedroom, unbuttons her green dress, and waits for tomorrow's careless clatter on the stair. Her longing is tentative, resentful, a fox, shyly extending her leg. They are 2 possibilities, hassling in the glow of porch lights, exposed and desperate, each of them indivisible as steam. Today's story scarcely buttoned, already beginning to gray. Tomorrow crouching impatient, always wanting more than his fair share. Two more. Robot Diary 3021 Q10, boyfriend. Hurt me, robot, I command, which he knows he can't do, on account of the first and second laws of robotics. He takes a playful swipe at me with a titanium arm. Blushing a little, I can tell, he gets that twinkle in his positronic eyes. At night he lets me push his buttons. Then I read him poetry. He likes C.K. Williams. This is how men renounce. This is how we obliterate. Mornings he makes me bacon, crispy and soft at the same time, electrons flowing perfectly in the same direction. I tell him I like bacon, and his eyes flash blue. We sleep in deep space, our bedroom empty and cold. But worry lights his circuit board, and I know he's thinking about the Mars rover again, all alone up there. And my last poem, I paint my life with stars sometimes. Sometimes I go nova and withdraw, take with me all matter and time. Sometimes I'm Jupiter's red storm. Sometimes I deny myself completely, live life that way. Lie down in the desert like a good idea and take root there. If stars are fate, let me paint my life with stars that burn into soft compliance, crossing space, come to their cosmic point. Sometimes I'm dust, a neutrino in motion, a boy falling out of the sky. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And last, but definitely not least, Alexis Ivy, a fine poet in her own right, will be reading a selection of Barbara Hyett's poetry from Hyett's latest book, Come Thunder. Alexis is a 2018 recipient of the Massachusetts Cultural Council Fellowship in Poetry. She's the author of Romance with Small-Time Crooks and Taking the Homeless Census, which won the 2018 Saturnalia Editors Prize. She is the director of an outreach program in Cambridge and teaches in the Poem Works community. Now let me introduce Barbara Hyett, a poet whose work has won awards from the Boston Foundation's Artist Fellowship Award, the New England Poetry Club's Gertrude Warren Prize, and 2 Massachusetts Cultural Council grants. Barbara Hyett has also led workshops and mentored poets for 40 years. Through her generosity and brilliance as both poet and teacher, Barbara has created a devoted and supportive poetry community. Many of those she mentored have themselves become successful poets. She had the manuscript for her 6th book ready to go when she was diagnosed with an illness and became unable to teach or represent her work. Many felt that her final book, Come Thunder, was her best, and Alexis Ivy worked with Barbara to put together this manuscript published by Lily Poetry Review Press. I am a longtime admirer of Barbara and her work. Each of her books is remarkable in its own way, but the assurance of Come Thunder is stunning. This collection is the culmination of a poet who has worked long and hard at her art, who has earned the authority to tell us, make it life up, then force your eyes to see it. I could go on and on praising Barbara's work, but that's not what you've come to hear. So please welcome Alexis Ivy as she reads to us from Come Thunder.
Hi, it's great to be here tonight. Thank you everyone for inviting me to read, and it's just great to be in Cambridge and reading live. I am going to begin reading some of Barbara's poems and then finish with some of my own. I just wanted to say that Barbara was my mentor who was unable to read her work at this time, and she helped me find my voice, so it's an honor to be giving her a voice today. I'm going to begin with her first chapter, which is entitled Atlantic City. All night the waves. 1. My name is bedtime. Everything is on my floor. All night the waves. All night the shouting. I am alone among everything on the floor. My small bed, my M&Ms. I am alone, or maybe there's a bear stuffed flatly, not growling, but a kind of motorized grind from behind his red felt lips. My name is Sleepy. The bear will not be quiet. My parents forget me from the living room. 2. My name is Morning. On my street all the doors are open. Sometimes they're closed. Sometimes there are no grown-ups all day. We have no keys. Nothing of mine breaks here. The doors are solid firmament, and all the keyholes stars. The keyholes kneel to see themselves. The sea breathes every hour. I keep a plaid umbrella on my doorknob. Sometimes I borrow. Sometimes I make a poem of my life. High wire, and it has an epigraph. Oh, the dying are such acrobats. Just fix this. Thanks. Thank you. Oh, the dying are such acrobats. Deborah Diggs. When my mother joined the circus, she played slide piano under the big top, learned tumbling from the Spanish family, could roll and roll as if forever. Lunchtime we'd marvel at the fire eaters, and Tattoo Man would muscle the crescent moon for me. Then she'd practice swinging on the trapeze. Sometimes I'd dance beneath her on the sawdust, or have to climb up part way, talk her down. She was not quite fit for balance. I could see that. Once I heard the bareback rider say, the fat lady ought to stay on the ground. Nights in our car, on the circus train, I'd wash her feet for her, rub them dry. I wasn't happy. I wasn't really sad. Relieved, I guess, or shy to be that close to my mother. In our bed, I'd wall my pillow between us, listen to the horses sway like spun gold. I had to learn to fend the lions off, had to learn to love them. Lifeguard. The ice cream man who trudged the beach, box roughly strapped by leather across his chest, dropped sweetness at our feet, let dry ice steam into the sky. I'd always buy an orange popsicle on account of not really knowing ice cream. We didn't have a proper freezer in our fridge. Time to swim to the pole that used to be the dock of the Grand Hotel. I floated for a while out there, then swam back in, was talking when the lifeguard called me over to his stand. Hey Barbara, do you make out? Of course, I said, not thinking, just wondering a little what make out meant. Could she tell my mother if I let the lifeguard kiss me? I want him to kiss me. He said he'd bring a beach towel for a pillow. I'd never shared a pillow with a boy. The sand was warm. I was new and starving for his tongue. I was 13. It was the summer that my father died. My mother, crazy nearly, and the beach chair people still wouldn't talk to me. I didn't know the stars then. Didn't know the hung on the sea moon. Afraid I was to look out. Unready to know. I'm going to go to her third chapter, which is Proof of the Spinning World. Poem at Split Rock Cove. Brush fire, watching fire as if it were sunrise yellowing. Say what you see, says the fire. I study the beach, rockweed tangled in stones. Pull at the barnacles attached to the stones. Squeeze bulbous seeds that refuse to yield. Resist The rockweed cries from the daily apocalypse. Hold to things slow and hard, says the tide. Believe in the hard, says the hard. The people in chairs sit on. A whale blows in the harbor, lifts its life without us in mind. Nothing is as it seems, not the five who stare at the fire, not the tide loudly lapping the fishing pier, not the ladders, not even the pile of empty lobster traps, not expecting a thing at all, though the paint-peeled buoy is bobbing. Be fair, says the buoy. Look again, says the sky. Last evening, this has an epigraph as well. Attention must be paid, Arthur Miller. It didn't merit celebration, just that I decided to sleep in the bed again, and rose in darkness from the reading chair, performed some ablutions, then pulled back the covers and sat down on the sheets. I lifted my legs, slid under covers, turned off the bed light, lay for a while, the pillow surprising my hair, faced the ceiling without thought or merit. Trucks come and go in the street. I smile a little, or I don't. I sense the armoire of my body, seek the key. Have rest come like unwilling children called home before dark. Faced right, faced left, and soon it was tomorrow. I swear I wanted to celebrate my return to the customary, but was unaccustomed to self-congratulation, so rose quickly into the new day. In this note to myself, without forethought or erasure, I declare that I have changed. And the last poem I'm going to read is actually dedicated, to Wendy Drexler. It's called Latitude 40 North. No road signs, no instructions in the glove compartment, no way to shift into reverse the rented Renault. The moon is full and screaming orange over onion fields. The sky, not black exactly, mottled like a dog. There seems to be ditches ahead on both sides. I could read by the visor's tidy lamp, unreadable maps. I could try singing or eat dried apples from the bag, but real danger's too thin to swing around. Think dancing, think dandelions come up through a sidewalk crack, despite the odds. Isn't it possible for things to come out right? Maybe someone set out to find me. Are those lights in the distance as steady as stars? Think stars, before there was cosmos. Who has not been lost in this world? I am going to read a couple of my own poems. This first poem is dedicated to Barbara. It's a palindrome poem. It's called On the Loss of My Mentor. It sat on her bureau for decades. I pick up that pencil, sharpened down, 60 years saved. Is it a beautiful thing, a thing she found beautiful? She had a home that could be made memory, made realm, where objects matter utterly. A pencil isn't ugly or beautiful, but possible. But possible, a pencil isn't ugly or beautiful, where objects matter utterly. Made memory, made realm. She had a home that could be made a thing she found beautiful. Is it a beautiful thing, sharpened down, 60 years saved? I picked up that pencil. It sat on her bureau for decades. So I work in Cambridge, so I thought I'd read some poems that were taking place in Cambridge. This is actually from A Crown of Sonnets as well, so I decided to read. Thank you, Wendy. I'm going to start in the middle of the Crown and just read a few. The Crown is called the A Street Shelter. I'm starting on Sonnet 8. I had to take it when I was a child, Pam said, and I nod a yes, I am like her, show up for her, promise I'll be there for all the homeless I can. Stow blankets, hand out donated quilts, give people sleeping out in the rain ponchos, feed them protein bars, ham and cheese melts I made before my shift. Nuts I chose for Vegan Joe, he likes to be known. And I see her, Pam, drunk, can't leave the ground where she sprawls, because today she's sick of life. I tell her the world I know with a walk-in center for women. My job sweaters me. I'm careful, refuse to bleed, used to bleed. I'm careful, refuse to bleed, used to bleed. I first see Sharon at the end of her intake drunk. She isn't wearing her teeth like she was last week when we were hugging hello at an NA meeting. Share with the group the truth about ourselves. She knows my deep darks. Can't have her living here. This is the one place no one can tell on me. This was my safe place. Place for me not to have my history. Maybe she'll leave. Maybe she'll want to clean up. Maybe she'll go to a program, get sober, have teeth again. Maybe I'll give her my business. I've got your number, she says, Alexis. I've got your number, she says, Alexis. I wasn't there when she took off. It was the morning shift, and she must be in bliss in her new one-bedroom. All the walls were pine. She would put up her heirloom curtains. Her kitchen drawers she's filled with silverware stolen from the lunchroom. She died, doped up, so high her needle still in her vein. Kept wishing she were here. I would have Narcaned her not breathing. She was found on her so-new mattress, wrapped in her curtains, hadn't gotten bedding yet. Housing, she finally had it. A headstone. In the God sense of things, a place of her own. In a God sense of things, a place of his own. A man asleep on the bedrock construction site. It's 10 below. He must sting, his moan mildewed with booze. He wants nothing from me. I didn't want to leave him, but I did. I wish he'd wanted a place to go. Outside is where I work, and out here people die. One kid shot, stole pills off the wrong guy. Chicken choked, heart fails, drunk falls downstairs. Tonight I saved no one. I wish I had given him mittens, hand warmers, gloves to wear. I wanted to make the run. Would have driven him to shelter so he'd be warmed, yes. Would have cleaned the back seat of his sickness. Would have cleaned the back seat of his sickness, just so I could know the eye of one-eyed Sid. His eye, torn shut like that, tearless, how it got to be that way, and why it took so long for his left lid to wake, crusted shut each morning, his caged eye. He asked for socks. I ask him snowflake or unpatterned. Warm, he says. A necktie I get him. His court date is the 9th. No thanks, he says to a face-saving button-down shirt from the clothing closet. Won't take a razor to shave. Flirts, subtle grin, puts his hand on mine. You have moonstones, the 2 nicest eyes I have ever known. And the last poem I'm going to read is a Harvard poem because we are in Cambridge. On the 86 bus to Harvard graduation. I thought about wearing my tasseled cap, but it clashed with my bus persona, so I carried it in my book bag. Commencement was at the Drama Center where I saw Prometheus Bound by Zeus in Chains. I'm still that story my mother tells. At 2, I refused to wear the flowered dress. Even now I wouldn't think twice about stealing fire from the gods. Kicked out of every school I went to, asking for trouble all the time. Sure, I'm proud to be a Harvard graduate. Still, I can't believe this robe is mine.
Well, James whipped up a little thing while I was finishing. A little goodbye, a little thank you. So, for me and James and everyone here, thank you all for coming tonight. This was absolutely wonderful. Let's give these four wonderful poets a round of applause. Thank you all again. We have books for sale from everyone, and obviously more. And the poets will be signing their own works. We respectfully ask you all to pick up your chairs and place them against a wall when you're getting ready to leave. And our next reading is 1 week from today. We have a list up there on the wall. Nate Klug and Peter Cole will be reading. Thank you all. It's been wonderful meeting you and just seeing you all enjoy these poems. Thank you so much.